Hi, my name is David. I'm the co-founder of Oratio. It's a messaging platform which connects businesses with their customers and messengers. So it's basically a platform where you can connect multiple messengers to a company account. And lately, I'm take a deeper look into Vue.js and Firebase because actually I was looking for a possibility to do some side projects where I don't have to pay for my servers. And that's basically where I discovered Firebase. And also I wanted to take a deeper look in different JavaScript frameworks because the last time when I take a look at it was at Angular 1.6, and since then all has changed. So we have like now React.js, we have Vue.js, we have Angular, I think already version 5 or 6, I don't know, totally lost track of it. And yeah, today I want to give an introduction to Vue.js and Firebase. It will be a bit shorter than expected because I actually had my own laptop and wanted to do it a bit interactive, but since they don't have a VGA adapter here, I only have screenshots, so I'm sorry for that. Anyway, Firebase, who of you knows Firebase? It's a couple of guys. Basically, Firebase, they market themselves as everything you need to build and grow your app all in one place. So what they do is they have a variety of functions. It's basically a kind of a platform or infrastructure as a service where they provide functionality you need to build for an app or a website. So their products contains, for example, a database, crash reporting tools, authentications, not only email and password authentication, but also OAuth providers like Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, and so on. They also have like cloud storage, and you can also host your app there. And they give you, so you can actually connect your own domain if you own one, and you get a free SSL certificate. And they also have a free plan, which basically can get you started to build a simple app or a simple side product or side projects. For the web, I mean, they are not only a web product, so they have clients for C++, for Unity, for Android, for iOS, but also for the web. And these are the products they offer for the web. It's the real-time database or the new Cloud Firestore, which is basically a bit better JSON storage than the old real-time database. Then they have authentication providers, cloud functions, which are basically functions which run in the cloud and which can be triggered by an HTTP call. It's pretty similar to AWS Lambda, if you know that. Then you have cloud storage. It's basically just putting files in the cloud. Then you have hosting, Crashlytics, cloud messaging, and predictions. Predictions are basically a pretty cool tool to market the app because they're they collect data of your users and then do some really cool machine learning predictions. I actually didn't have time to check it out yet, but it sounds really promising. So what do we need to get started on Firebase and Vue.js? The Node Package Manager, then there is the Firebase command line interface, there's also the Vue command line interface, and of course the Google and Firebase account. Before we start here, can I get back here? Yeah. So basically setting up an account is pretty easy. So if you want to create a new Firebase account, you're just going to add a new project, choose your product name, which is, for example, Vue Vienna. And then just create your project. Take some time, but this is basically everything you need to set up to have a running Firebase project. Then you see the starting screen, and then basically we can go back to, where have we been? What we need to do on the command line. So first of all, we're going to create a directory where we want to have our project run in. I call it Vue Vienna. First thing we need to do is with the command line interface of Firebase is to log into our Google account so we can associate our directory with the Firebase Google account we have. And then we just need to initialize the project with Firebase in it. And we're going to choose hosting because we just want to host our Vue.js product there. I did a little template based on the webpack official template of Firebase, of Vue. So it's actually pretty cool because if you use the Vue command line interface and the official templates, you can basically fork an official template and edit the template and then get the templates basically through the Vue command line interface. What I'm added to this template is Vuex. It's basically a state manager for Vue. Then Vuelidate, which is a lightweight validation framework for Vue. Of course, Firebase. And I also added Bulma, which is a CSS framework based on Flexbox. It's basically like Bootstrap, but based on Flexbox, which is pretty cool. This is the link to the repository. And we can just init, if you like in the directory, we can just init this template. If we just call Vue init, the first numbers, this is my GitHub username, and then / the repository, which is called webpack-firebase, and then the name of the app. And in this case, it's just, the name of the app is just app. Then we can go into the directory and install all the dependencies. Before we start, we need to configure some stuff. First of all, we need to configure our Firebase config, which basically looks like this. So you get a project ID for a Firebase project, you get an API key, you get an auth domain, a database URL, and a storage bucket. So basically, if you create your app, you just go to your project settings, where you can find your API key and your project ID, and you just fill it in the config. The next thing you have to do is enable authentication providers if you want to use Firebase authentication, and configure the security rules in Firebase. So this is, again, pretty easy. First you go to authentication, and then you choose your sign-in methods. So here you can see you can choose between different sign-in methods, for example, standard email password, but also Google, Facebook, Twitter, GitHub, also with your phone. For now, we only need email and password, and Google, because these are the only ones you don't need setup for. Because for all the other ones, like for example, if you want to add a Facebook login, you need to create a Facebook app, of course, and put your app ID and app secret in there. So we're not going to do that now. With that, you're pretty much ready to enable authentication in your project. And yeah, this is the configuration. So now I've done like all the configuration. And if you have installed the template, you basically have this structure. Basically, everything you need is in the source directory of it's a subdirectory of the app directory. And you have assets, it's basically where you can save like images, CSS sheets, whatever. Then you have components, where you actually have the components of the app, which you develop after on. Then I have a configuration directory where you put in all the configuration for your different environments, like the test environment, the dev environment, the production environment. Then we have a router and the store. This is the main entry point, the main.js. Basically what we do here is we create a new Vue instance and just tell the Vue app that we're going to use Vuelidate, which is the validation library. We also import the router and the store and say Vue that we need to inject this, the router and the store to our Vue app. The second thing is the Firebase JavaScript, which basically just loads the correct configuration. So depending on your node environment, it either loads the dev, test, or production environment, and initialize the app, and also initializes the Firestore. So the Firestore, there's like the real-time database, which is the old database of Firebase, and the new one, the Firestore, which is still in beta, but it's way better, so I'm go ahead with Firestore because I think it's way better than the old one. Then we have our main component, which is the app. This is basically where all the Vue.js magic happens. What we do in there, it's basically just a simple template, which just contains the router view. The router view is basically take care of the routes and loading the right components for the routes. And what we do here is actually not that much. There's only one thing we need to take care of. It's in the created function, which is a function which is called when the component is created, basically when you load the site. And as you can see here, we have like this Firebase auth on auth state changed. This function is called every time when the authentication changes. Basically, when someone signs up, signs in, or logs out, then this function is called. Why we also need that right now is because when in the beginning, when the app loads, we don't know if the user is logged in or not because we have to wait for the call to Firebase if we have a logged in user or not. So you can see basically if the user is set, what we do is here we store the user in our Vuex state manager, and we forward it to dashboard. And if there's no user logged in, we just redirect to the login page. This is our store. It only has for now one thing to do, and this is keeping track of the user, the signed-in user of Firebase. So we just store the user object of Firebase in our Vuex store manager. The second thing we have is the router. I've created a couple of routes which you usually need if you're creating a new project. So it's the register one where people register, the login one where people can log in, and the dashboard, which is basically the first page the user sees if he's logged in. And as you can see in the bottom, there's this auth field true. So if there's, so before each route, I also check if the user is logged in and if the user is allowed to visit the website. So basically, if the auth field is set for the dashboard, for example, this is a route where only people are allowed who are logged in. Then we check that, and if there's no user currently logged in, we just redirect them to the login. Then here's just a simple example of our user register page. There's not that much to see. Most of the classes are from Bulmar, just to make it look nice. We have here a sign up with Google link. If we click on this link, we call the method sign up with and the provider Google. And on the bottom here, you can see a traditional email and password sign up. I'm just going to go shortly into the sign up with authentication provider method. So if we click this button, then what basically happens is that we initialize a new auth provider. So based on the platform we were given in the function, we either have here Facebook or Google. Then we just create a new Firebase authentication provider with Google. And then we just need to call Firebase auth and sign in with popup, which basically means that a pop-ups pops up and you sign in with a Google account. And if the pop-up closes, this data is sent back to Firebase, which happens here in this the then function. So basically, if the sign up with Google was successful, we go further in the then function, and we get the current user which is logged in from Firebase, and we can store it to our Firestore database. So this database is a reference to the Firestore of Firebase. The thing is, Firebase takes care of authentication for you, but you still need to save the user data on your own, because otherwise it's really hard to use this data, for example, the email or the display name programmatically. So I really recommend to create to save the user for your own in the data store and not only use the authentication. Yeah. The next thing we have to do is just to configure the hosting. It's just a JSON file, the Firebase JSON, which is in the root directory. And the only thing we do is we just say which directory we want to be hosted. In our case, it's the app directory and in the subdirectory dist, because this is where all the production files go in. And we can also say, please ignore these files, for example, Firebase JSON or node modules, because they're gonna be installed anyway. So. To deploy is actually, we just need to go into the app directory again. Then we need to run the build function, which is part of the webpack template. So it basically creates a dist directory and pulls all the files together, minifies all the files, and gives you like the whole dist directory. Then we need to go one directory down and can deploy it to Firebase easily with Firebase deploy only hosting. Just to show you, I've prepared a project already. So this is basically all what we've done. Leaves us with, you can see in hosting, you can see that this is our latest deploy. This is our URL. It comes with a free HTTP SSL certificate. And this is basically what we get from this template. So what you can do already is sign up or basically create an account. So we're going to sign up with Google because it's set up. You can see the pop-up. And now we're logged in. So this is basically the complete flow of this template. So it's the webpack template, and I enhanced it a little bit with authentication management with Firebase. So if you start with this template, you can basically have a Vue.js template with a little bit of design from Bulma CSS, and on top of that, you have already the user management. So for me, it's just a little template so that I get started easier for side projects and stuff like that. But there's also some things you don't want to do in the front end. So therefore, we have cloud functions, which are pretty cool. Let's see where we have it. Cloud functions are basically functions which are triggered through an HTTPS call. So you don't have to pay the resources or host the server. It's basically if something calls the URL you were given for example, Google Cloud Functions, then this function is executed. Firebase has this function. It's pretty similar like to AWS Lambda. It's kind of a serverless infrastructure, so you don't have to take care of your server or host your own server. You just host the functions at, I don't know, Google Cloud Functions or AWS Lambda, and you don't have to take care of anything beneath. So to initialize this Firebase function, you just type in Firebase init functions. It creates directory functions, package JSON, and the index.js. If you want to use Firestore, which is still in beta, you need to install a specific version of Firebase, or exactly the Firebase admin. And you basically get this. So basically you have the functions directory with all the node modules and the index.js. And how it works is pretty easy. You require the functions of Firebase. You require the Firebase admin. You initialize the app and initialize Firestore. And then basically you just export function. This, for example, hello world is one function. And for incoming request, it just sends out the response, hello from Firebase. And here's a more complex function. The function is called getUser. So for an incoming request, it just loads all users from the Firestore collection users and converts them to a JSON object. So basically, if you get objects from a from a collection. You get a snapshot first, a reference snapshot, and then you can go through the documents or the reference documents and get the data for all these documents. To show you the functions. So basically the name is translated into a slug. So the hello world function is your Firebase domain plus the slug. It often takes some time if it's called the first time, because usually the functions are sleeping, and if they're called more and more often, they're not going to sleep anymore. So this gives us hello from Firebase, as we've seen in the slides. And the second function, which we just did, is the one to get all the users. So it's translated to your subdomain of the cloud functions, and then get user, which is the name of the function. And this loads all the users from the database, and you can see it's just me so far. It's from my Google account and my name. So, and if you want to deploy it, you can just deploy it with Firebase deploy. If you do Firebase deploy, you deploy everything, like hosting and functions together. If you just want to deploy functions or just hosting, you do -- only functions or hosting. And yeah, that's basically it. I can put the slides online later on if you want to. And if you have any questions, you can reach me on GitHub, Telegram, Facebook, or Twitter. Thank you.